And we are back with another episode of the Kyle Lanslone Show. I am very excited about the show that we have lined up today. Pro-American or pro-Israeli American companies have a lot of spying power in the United States, and we'll be breaking all of that down with our guest. But first, I want to talk about the sponsor of today's show, and that is the Expat Money Summit 2025. The Expat Money Summit is a fantastic annual event put on by Mikhail Thorup, who is the host of the Expat Money Show. They will help you create a plan B, get a second passport, be able to get out of the United States, where to buy property abroad. All these questions will be answered at the Expat Money Summit. There is also a VIP portion of that event. I will be on one of the VIP panels. And if you want your VIP ticket, you could get 20% off at expatmoneysummit.com when you use the promo code Kyle. So you can either go get your free registration ticket to the event or get the VIP ticket at expatmoneysummit.com. Again, use the promo code Kyle when you check out. Now, bringing in our guest today is somebody I am very excited about. It's not every day that there's kind of a new person on the anti-interventionist scene, somebody who has a lot of really interesting things to say. Not only that, is an absolutely fantastic writer. That is Harrison Berger. He is formerly with System Update. There's a researcher. Now he is writing at Dropsite News, The American Conservative, and Responsible Statecraft, basically all the favorite outlets of this show. So Harrison, welcome. How are you doing?
Hey, I really appreciate the introduction and the invite. It's really great to be here. Thank you.
Of course. Yeah, we've had some conversations behind the scenes at antiwar.com. Who's this new guy? He's doing fantastic stuff. And so I'm very happy to get to meet you and make contact because we have been running you a lot at antiwar.com. Now, on today's show, I wanted to focus on this recent article that you wrote for the American Conservative. Pro-Israel Palantir endangers our liberties, and kind of talking about a few different subjects that you touch on the article. Palantir, ties to Israel, Oracle's role, and then the potential crackdown in response to the Kirk assassination at the end if we have time. So starting off with Palantir, in this article for the American Conservative, you write, far from being a counter-elite defending freedom against the establishment, Alex Karp and Palantir embody the establishment itself, having built the ultimate apparatus for surveillance and control. So Harrison, I think a lot of people, particularly in the libertarian side, maybe had some sympathies for Alex Karp and Peter Thiel, but you say, no, don't trust these guys. They're a part of the establishment. Why do you make that assessment?
I mean, I think that sympathy is understandable if all you do is just listen to them, because they do market themselves in this using this libertarian language. People like Peter Thiel, they go on all the major podcasts like Joe Rogan. They go on Barry Weiss's podcast, which frankly I don't think many people listen to anymore. But they go around media and they present themselves using libertarian language, saying that they're there to protect civil liberties, that they're doing it to fight all the bad guys. And even just last week, they were at the All-In Summit, which was David Sachs's conference. And they said, well, no, we're not taking Americans' data. We're not building dossiers on you. We're not doing all the things that, frankly, have been reported for years that they're doing. So I understand why people are confused, and it's actually intentional. It's propaganda, so it's meant to confuse you, and it's very effective. In reality, though, Palantir is just the CIA. I mean, it began as a program called Total Information Awareness in 2002 that was shut down because it was an unconstitutional program. People found out about it. The CIA program, that it was going to collect all their data and build profiles and dossiers on them. And Congress said, no, we're not going to do this. But John Poindexter, who was the Iran-Contra criminal who created this CIA program, he didn't let that stop him. He just went to the private sector, and through the CIA's venture capital arm, In-Q-Tel, they gave Alex Karp, Joe Lonsdale, and Peter Thiel billions of dollars to construct this ultimate surveillance apparatus. They worked with the NSA in 2017 and long before that to filter their X-keyscore data to spy on American citizens. And before that, they were caught spying on my previous boss, Glenn Greenwald, who's an excellent journalist. spying on him, trying to disrupt his reporting on WikiLeaks. So that's who the company is, and people shouldn't be confused who they truly are.
Yeah, no, excellent breakdown. Now, just before we get into the Israel stuff, which is important, this Palantir and Alex Karp in particular seem to be very involved in the Trump administration. Again, this gives off anti-establishment vibes. So, how closely tied is Palantir to the current White House?
Well, first of all, I think that's absolutely correct. They've been remarkably successful in the Trump administration. They just last month got this $10 billion contract from the Pentagon to do all types of surveillance on American citizens, likely over their, criticisms of Israel. That seems to be the target that they go after the most now. I mean, they say so publicly. So they're very close with the Trump administration. Their stock has gone up, I think, about 125% just this year. So they've, signed all these very lucrative contracts with the administration. At the same time, it's very strange because people like, Alex Karp, Joe Lonsdale, they all have very different politics. And they remind me actually of someone like Bill Kristol, who, for those who don't know, Bill Kristol founded the Weekly Standard, which was this neocon rag, the ultimate neocon rag. And he took all types of positions on culture war issues, throughout the 15 years that existed. So at one point he was against gay marriage. When it became popular, he was in favor of it. But the core beliefs that all these people have, Bill Kristol, Alex Karp, they're neocons. They want U.S. militarism in support of Israel, and they actually lobby on behalf of that. So, they're in groups in the past like PNAC, and now they're just a part of the Israel lobby overtly. Those are their goals. They don't really care about, wokeness or anti-woke, even though they, of course, use that language to market themselves and make them popular with the masses. They actually don't care about it at all. All they care about is getting these surveillance contracts and, fighting these wars on behalf of Israel. And I shouldn't even call them wars. Some of them are just, genocide.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, when we talk about the surveillance apparatus and how that could impact Americans, that's very concerning for me. But as you write in your article, but Palantir is not merely another U.S.-based contractor. It's fueled with the priorities of Israel's own security state and functions as part of the Israel lobby inside of the U.S. Its chief executives, Karp, Joe Lonsdale, and former Rep Mike Gallagher, have more than just an affinity for Israel. They are ideological fanatics who openly conflate Israel's enemies with their own. So, just how deep are the ties between Palantir and Tel Aviv and Israel?
Well, let me start by saying that we were all told that old adage that, the terrorists like bin Laden, they're the ones who hate us for our freedoms. In reality, it's people like Alex Karp, Joe Lonsdale, and, Peter Thiel who really hate us for our freedoms. They want to destroy the First Amendment. They've said so. They say that student activists on campus, who they call pro-Hamas activists, are the most radical threat to the United States right now, even more so sometimes than foreign terrorists that, frankly, don't often exist. That's their worldview, and that's why I mentioned John Poindexter and Oliver North at the start, because they are from the same kind of ideological faction. The idea that, we have our enemies abroad, and that's one thing, but the biggest enemy to the national security elite is actually anti-war agitators and protesters at home, because they restrict the ability of the United States to just kill whoever it wants abroad. That's a problem for them, and they've known so since the 1980s. They've designed all sorts of surveillance apparatuses to mitigate that problem. And look, they've been very effective. If you look at what happened on college campuses, it was really this kind of Zionist billionaire class which intervened, which got these students arrested, expelled. People like Bill Ackman even called the NYPD personally and had them arrest college students at Columbia. So that's who their enemy is. They're the ones who hate us for our freedoms, and they're not going to stop. The reason I wrote this article is because there's so much that's happened already, but they've already announced their intentions to do more.
Yeah. So, what might some of those things be that they could do in the future?
So this is very interesting. There is just a report that came out today, not really about, I mean, it's about censorship. It's about TikTok, which has been one of the biggest issues for Israel. I should preface this by saying the following, that, you know, as Israel has its various wars to create this greater Israel, that's the purpose of their campaign in Lebanon and Syria, and Egypt, and everywhere, in Gaza and the West Bank. And also in Yemen and Iran. Sorry, it takes a long time to say all that because they've bombed so many places in the past 2 years. But the purpose of that campaign is to construct a greater Israel. And in order to do that, they need the support of Western democracies, which they depend on, like the United States. And Israel has known for at least 15 years, going back to the Reut report in 2010, after one of their bombing campaigns in Gaza, that they're losing that support in Western democracies, which they need and depend on to do these types of campaigns. And Israel, you know, doesn't really compromise. That's not what they do. Instead of, you know, trying to debate and argue their points, they're trying to control the information system in the United States. That's what the effort to ban TikTok was about. And now there's all sorts of censors that the Israeli government has actually itself placed at all these social media platforms like Facebook, like Instagram, and like TikTok, to control the information that young people like myself are receiving about Israel. They've hired IDF instructors like this woman named Erica Mindell now to be a censor at TikTok. TikTok has partnered with this group called Cyberwell, which is run by Israeli intelligence officials. They're a content moderation partner. They're censoring all over TikTok. And they just announced yesterday that their new plan is to go into AI, to look at language models and filter them so that people aren't receiving what they call anti-Semitic information, anti-Israel information. So to answer your question in kind of a long way, that's what this kind of campaign to control the internet is about. And their next step is AI.
Yeah, well, you know, a really important thing I could throw in here is, you know, you have Representative Mike Gallagher mentioned as being one of the executives for Palantir. And of course, he was the original author of the TikTok ban bill. And I actually picked this up on Glenn Greenwald, so who knows, maybe it originally came from you. But when they initially introduced that bill, it didn't have the support it needed in Congress to pass. It was only after October 7th, and the content on TikTok was overwhelmingly not anti-Semitic, but pro-Palestinian, that Congress finally had the will to act and pass this legislation. So, you know, that's a really interesting piece of all this and of the technological control.
You're absolutely right. We did cover that extensively. And there was an important moment, actually, in November 2023, this time period that we're talking about, when they introduced this revived bill to ban TikTok, because as you mentioned, the first attempt to ban TikTok failed. They wanted to do it to, you know, stop Chinese propaganda or data manipulation on the app, but ultimately they signed a partnership deal with Oracle to manage all the US data under this program called Project Texas, which took that concern off the table. So that wasn't a problem, and the original bill failed. They revived the bill after October 7th. As you mentioned, in the beginning of November, Mike Gallagher went to the pages of David Ellison and Larry Ellison's new page, or new blog, The Free Press, to explain that there's too much pro-Hamas sentiment on TikTok. And that was the reason they wanted to ban it. Immediately afterward, around the beginning of December or the end of November, I'm not entirely sure, Osama bin Laden's letter to America, where he lays out precisely the reasons why he attacked the United States on 9/11, became very popular on TikTok. It spread like wildfire on the algorithm. I remember because it was late at night after a show one time, and all these videos of Letter to America started popping up. I thought, okay, maybe it is just for me because that's kind of the sort of thing that I would look at on TikTok. But no, a bunch of my friends had it too, and they're not political. So it was going around, and people were learning why we were attacked on 9/11, that it had nothing to do with the official explanation that we were told, that, these terrorists just hated us for our freedoms, that we allowed women to wear, too many bikinis or something. I mean, I live in Brazil. There's more of that here, and they didn't get attacked. So it wasn't about that, obviously. It was because of U.S. militarism, as bin Laden explained in this letter, that was censored. Because that's what happened. This letter, where he explains his reasons for attacking the United States, U.S. militarism, and our support for Israel, was immediately censored from TikTok. And The Guardian even deleted it and censored it from its own website, where it had hosted this letter for like 20 years because the pro-Israel lobby demanded it.
Yeah, it's a very scary level of censorship that we're experiencing here in the U.S. and how much of it is just really, as you say, to prop up and to help Israel complete its Greater Israel project, which of course means mass murder and mass ethnic cleansing campaigns across not just Israel and not just what is Israel, Gaza, the West Bank, but also southern Lebanon and Syria. They're throwing Syrians and Lebanese out of their homes, wide bombing campaigns in those countries as well. I mean, these are massive war crimes we're talking about them covering up. Now, some of these war crimes, you point out in your article, Palantir actually helps Israel commit, not just by trying to prevent Americans from seeing them, but they actually have a role in kind of Israel's war machine. So can you talk about that a little bit?
Right. Actually, Larry Ellison and Alex Karp and Palantir both do in different ways. I'll start with Palantir. Palantir provides the AI targeting tools to Israel that they use for targeting in Gaza. If you know anything about how Israel's been waging its campaign, they don't really target discriminately at all. They target indiscriminately. Palantir knows that. In fact, they've been questioned about it many times. Even at public events. There was a famous incident where a journalist asked, well, why are you allowing this to happen? Why are you allowing, asking Peter Thiel, why are you allowing Israel to use your AI in this way to kill scores of women and children every single day? We all see the videos, they're all online. And he said, well, my preference is to defer to Israel. And I asked this in the piece, and I'll ask your audience too, like, do you want someone holding the keys to like the most powerful surveillance apparatus to say that they want to defer to Israel? Should they show deference to Israel? No, I mean, this is a United States company with all of your data. I mean, we were just talking about the supposed national security risk of China having all of this data. What if Israel has it? I mean, China doesn't really start many wars, to be honest. They're not fighting any right now. Israel, on the other hand, they're fighting on 99 fronts, pretty much. So moving, though, toward Larry Ellison, it's very similar. He's the second largest private donor to Israel, other than Sheldon Adelson, and Sheldon and Miriam Adelson, I should say. He donates to Friends of Israel, which spends their money on settlements and the IDF directly. So he donates directly to the war effort. He likes it. He's a personal friend of Netanyahu. He even offered Netanyahu a board seat on his company. But it's actually, the Ellisons are a little more sinister than that. The journalist Jack Paulson, who's an excellent journalist, he's All Source Intelligence is the name of his Substack, which I highly recommend you read. He just published a piece last week when I was writing this article about the ways in which the Ellisons are now have collaborated with Israeli military intelligence on cyber campaigns against Americans, mainly Americans who use their free speech to support a boycott of Israel. So if you support the BDS movement, it's called, you were targeted by Israeli cyber intelligence, and the Ellisons coordinated on that effort against the United States.
Yeah, the anti-BDS laws are very concerning for people who don't know. BDS, of course, stands for boycott, divestment, and sanctions. And particularly in the United States of America, the boycott is very important because that's protected acts under the First Amendment. You could boycott whoever you want. You could associate and do business with whoever you want. And just this week, very disturbingly, 250 American state-level lawmakers went to Israel for a lecture by the Israeli Israeli Foreign Minister Gideon Sa'ar about how you need to adopt anti-BDS laws and the definition of the International Holocaust Remembrance Coalition, I think, that says basically, their definition of anti-Semitism more or less amounts to criticism of Israel is anti-Semitism. So this certainly needs to be something that we are all very concerned about.
I absolutely agree. I mean, what's happened also with universities, where I know people may support what's happening to universities, given that maybe they might be overrun with DEI or wokeness or whatever. Frankly, that's all free speech. I'm sorry to tell you, and the right to protest Israel on campuses is also free speech. The right to do those types of encampments. I mean, we've been doing those in the anti-war movement for decades. Sorry, there's pictures online in the 60s and 70s. That's just how it's done. The fact that colleges and universities were conditioned funding by the Trump administration over one form of discrimination alone, and supposed anti-Jewish bigotry, which I can tell you for a fact, as a Jewish person who graduated from college not very long ago, and was the president of their Jewish group on campus, in fact, Chabad, anti-Semitism is incredibly marginal at colleges in the United States. Like, everyone can relax. It's not really a problem. But nevertheless, the Trump administration has conditioned funding until they stamp out the supposed anti-Semitism, which we all know just means anti-war activism. If you oppose Israel's genocide in any material way, you're instantly and reflexively labeled an anti-Semite, to the point that that phrase, or anti-Semite, just doesn't have any meaning anymore.
Yeah. No, I think it's really had, kind of an inverse effect. Rather than making Americans feel more pro-Jewish, or at least, not having a particular bias against Jewish people, it's made people feel the other way, where if you criticize Israel, now that you're an anti-Semite, the certain percent of the population is just going to say, I'm an anti-Semite then. I saw this happen to a lot of conservatives during the Black Lives Matter movement, where if they pushed back against anything at all, even the mildest way, they were called a racist. And eventually they just said, well, fine, I'm a racist, I don't care anymore. And then they adopt more hardline positions. So I certainly don't see any this as a positive. Now, we're already talking about Oracle a little bit, but I did want to read this quote from your article, which I thought was really important. Oracle, like Palantir, aligns itself outright with the priorities of the Israeli government. Its Israeli-born CEO even told employees, if you are not for America or Israel, don't work here. And so how can you have this company that's so tied to the American government, the American spying and security apparatus? Like, if they want to say, if you're not for America, don't work here, I don't think that's a particularly controversial statement for an American company to make. But imagine if they're saying, if you're not for Russia, if you're not for any other country in the world except Israel, that's the one country. I think even if they said, if you're not for France, don't work here, Americans would be kind of outraged by it. But they get a pass when it comes to Israel. I mean, could this really be the company's policy?
I mean, it is, and frankly, it's basically an Israeli company at this point. If you look at their priorities and their public statements, they just also bought TikTok with Mark Andreessen and Ben Horowitz, the son of the crazy neocon David Horowitz, major pro-Israel. In fact, Andreessen Horowitz just went last month to recruit elite IDF units to invest in, because they're big investors. They want to invest in the IDF. They see all the cool things that they're doing in Gaza, their pager attack in Lebanon, that terrorism, and they want to invest in it. And Oracle is much the same way. Now they all have control of TikTok, and as I just mentioned, this app has just been a problem for the Israel lobby for 2 years now. I go on there a lot. It's not good for Israel. You just watch videos of children in Gaza being targeted all day long, and they want to censor that. They don't like that. It's very bad for their public image. To actually see what Israel's doing is very bad for Israel. The fact that these companies now, and I'll say one more thing I didn't mention yet about the Ellisons and Oracle. At the same time that they're gobbling up TikTok and they're investing or helping Israel surveil all their enemies and crack down on all their critics in the United States, they're also gobbling up pretty much all of our mainstream media. They just bought, or they're trying to buy Warner Brothers, Discovery, and HBO, in addition to the Free Press and Paramount and CBS, and CNN is included in there too. I guess it's like against this IHRA definition, in fact, which you mentioned, the IHRA definition of anti-Semitism, to accuse Zionists, and I'm not saying Jewish people, I'm saying specifically Zionists, to control the media in the United States. But isn't that what's happening? I mean, they're buying up everything. So these Zionist oligarchs like Larry Ellison are trying to control the media, trying to control the information system, censor Americans, and all the while they're helping Israel wage genocide.
Yeah, absolutely. So I want to take us away from your article before we wrap up here, because I do think that, the concerns stretch beyond just cracking down on pro-Israel speech. And the Trump administration seems to be intent at this point on using the Charlie Kirk assassination as a part of a crackdown on what I think will be left-wing groups, but who really knows? These are recent comments from our Attorney General, Pam Bondi.
There's free speech, and then there's hate speech. And there is no place, especially now, especially after what happened to Charlie, in our society.
Do you see more law enforcement going after these groups who are using hate speech and putting cuffs on people, so we show them that some action is better than no action?
We will absolutely target you, go after you, if you are targeting anyone with hate speech, anything. And that's across the aisle.
So one of the reasons I'm so concerned here is the perception of so many people kind of on the right, and particularly, people who have one foot in the Zionist camp, who listen a lot to Netanyahu, who is saying that, this is really a result of the pro-Hamas, the progressive movement in the U.S. And so are you concerned that if the Trump administration does really decide to crack down on what they call hate speech, which is just free speech, right? There's no difference between the two. Even Charlie Kirk noted that when he was still alive, hate speech is free speech, that they could use systems like that have been developed by Palantir and Oracle to really start rounding up people, or at least arresting people and harassing them here in the U.S.
Kyle, the ways in which Charlie Kirk's death has been exploited by all sorts of bad actors, starting with Benjamin Netanyahu and now the U.S. security deep state, to do the sorts of crackdowns that they've always wanted to do on free speech, the type of free speech that Charlie Kirk defended when he was alive and would likely be defending if he was still alive now. That effort to do that is just shameless and disgusting. To your point about Pam Bondi, people are really starting to question whether or not she's fit for this role. I mean, it's pretty basic that hate speech is free speech. You can ask The Fire, the free speech group that has consistently defended free speech, no matter if it's free speech from the right or free speech from the left. They'll tell you that. I don't know what she's talking about. I am very concerned about the crackdown, though. This is something that, unfortunately, Trump endorsed. The night that Charlie Kirk died, he gave a speech where he said that he was going to order his government to target not just groups that perpetrate violence, but groups that merely support it using their free speech. And that is what it looks like is happening now. There's obviously also this accompanying cancel culture, which is partly directed by members of Congress. Anna Paulina Luna is one. Nancy Mace, of course, who's always looking for attention, is another, saying that, the Department of Education is now going to have to condition funding for public K through 12 school districts based on whether the teachers in those schools adhere to official government ideology and venerate Charlie Kirk. That makes no sense at all. And that's completely unconstitutional. You don't have to be a lawyer to know that. You just have to read, the few lines of the First Amendment. It's very clear. It is very strange to hear Pam Bondi sound like this kind of MSNBC liberal saying, oh, there's hate speech and then there's free speech. I mean, this was the argument that the right heard for many years, whether it came to Black Lives Matter or people's controversial views about LGBTQ trans issues. And now the right has adopted those arguments for themselves. You'll see another one that I'm seeing a lot, which is, oh, this isn't cancel culture, this is accountability culture. So we're reviving all these old excuses just to destroy the First Amendment and exploit the death of Charlie Kirk, which, again, is disgusting.
Yeah, absolutely. Harrison, thank you so much for coming on the show today and sharing your insights, particularly when it came to Palantir and all of this. I think it's a really important issue that unfortunately gets missed, and your writing has been really crucial to exposing some of that. Everybody, I highly recommend you follow Harrison's work. I think every article that he's written in the past month we have linked to on the front page of antiwar.com because they've just been all fantastic. I know you're at Berger Post on Twitter, but where else do you want people to go to follow you and to keep up with what you're doing?
Yeah, so I post in many places or publish in many places, but I always post everything on my Substack, which is Berger Post at substack.com. So hopefully you follow me there. And again, thank you for all the kind words and for inviting me today. It was a privilege.
Absolutely. We'll have to do it again. Thank you.